Have you ever had life knock you down hard enough to make you ask why you're even still here? And then you have to decide what to do with the life you've been given. My guest today, Jay Setchell, has survived multiple accidents that should have taken his life. And he could have gotten stuck asking, why me? But instead, he turned his focus to finding why God still has him here. Welcome to the Grace Forge podcast. I'm your host, Karen Dittman, and this is a place to be reminded that when life brings the impossible, God doesn't just show up. He forges exactly what you need to walk through it. Jay, thank you for joining me today on the Grace Forge podcast.
Hey, Karen, good to be here, young lady.
Thank you. So, I'm going to invite you to just jump right in and share with us your story of how you've seen God at work in your life through his grace.
Wow, there's a lot to share. I mean, I don't I will try to sum it up the best I can that throughout my life I've had multiple clashes of being dead and brought back and near death and over 6 dozen surgeries and I've moved multiple times. I've had to change my direction of my life and what I'm going to do. And as an entrepreneur, that worked out great. Even corporately, the time I spent corporately, I just was blessed with making good choices and right decisions. And not everyone was maybe the best choice or the best decision, but we all are a product of the choices and decisions we've made. So I mean, I simply know that I'm only here by the grace of God, uh, because of everything I've been through. So that really sums up, I guess, an initial introduction of why I looked at your show and thought, wow, this is a good opportunity.
Yeah, wow. And 6 dozen surgeries? That's like more than
73, I had my 73rd last July.
oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's a lot. And so, and you said that multiple times you've been brought back from death. I know you told me about one time when, or you started to tell me a little bit about one time when your mom was in her 40s. And so just share with us, if you can, one of those incidents and where you saw God at work in that.
It's better, it's easier if I kind of go through three or four,
Okay.
but very briefly, and I won't take
Okay.
long. I mean, when I
Yeah.
was 17, I had just turned, it was the week after I turned 17, 1967. My birthday's New Year's Eve, so the first week in January, Northern Illinois, it was probably 10, 15 degrees below zero. And anyhow, I got my foot caught in a feeding auger and I was able to catapult off of it into the snow and all it did was slice my ankle open and or break my ankle, slice my leg open, my boot open, and had the auger run or I not been able to get off of it within 3 to 4 seconds, I would have looked like hamburger. I'd have
Mm.
just been ground up, disappeared. They wouldn't even know where I went, actually. I would have just turned into silage. So that was when I just turned 17. When I was 19, November 12th, 1969, I died in the Marine Corps. Very, very bad. I spent a year in the Naval Hospital. They got me back after it took them about 20 minutes
Mm.
and got me back. The one you're talking about was 4 years later that I mentioned earlier, and a drunk had hit me almost head on, not quite, but almost took my motor out and the side of the car off, took my left side off, quite a bit of it, refractured ribs, punctured lungs, all that stuff. And the other gentleman got killed. He didn't have a seatbelt on, got thrown out of his pickup truck and run over by his truck. And I did have my seatbelt. I always wore my dad was a big seatbelt person from when I back in the 50s because he was a pilot. And but what I was commenting to you earlier when I came back, I had a different out of body excuse me experience that time, and I was looking down at the people and I bled out and they were getting blood back into me with direct transfusions. And I woke up 3, 4 days later, it was in the hospital. I mean, at one time I'm hearing voices like a peace and a calmness, like I'm being I'm going up. I'm out. I'm looking way, way down. Gosh darn, excuse me. At my car. And then I came to, well, about 5 or 6 days into it, I'm sure my mother had been there and my dad, because it was local. But she came in and she had a rolled up newspaper and she was whacking me on the arm and she was yelling, or not yelling at me, but she was not happy with me. She was probably 47, I'm going to guess, but
Okay.
she was saying, "Quit doing this to us. Quit doing this because," but I never thought. I told her, I said, "Ma, I didn't do it on purpose." It's like, but thinking from her point, she had been with me. She'd flown out to Camp Pendleton to the Naval Hospital and the Marine Corps base
Mm.
just 4 years before that. Not even 4 years, and couldn't even recognize me. I was in a coma, and then they put me back in another coma, and I was totally destroyed. So it was like I could see her point later as I looked at it, like, stop doing this. And then 8 years later, on July 4th, 1981, I jumped in a swimming pool, feet first, broke my neck in 4 places and drowned, and was under for about 8 minutes. And when they got me back, I don't I don't remember anything for 4 or 5 days. And on that, the first thing I recall was the doctor telling me that I jumped in a pool, broken my neck multiple places, I was paralyzed, and I would probably remain that way the rest of my life. That was it. And the biggest moment that changed my life, I really believe, is my wife. I was only married 3 weeks. It was my second wife. I was married 3 weeks to the day that it happened, but she was down in front of me. I was in a circle bed that had these bolts and this apparatus called the Gardner and Wells tongs bolted in my skull. And later I had a halo cast. You can see the little holes and they're in multiple places. But she told me, she said, "I've got a gentleman here I've met in the waiting room, and his son is in the hospital, and he would like to say a prayer for you. And, if that's okay, blink your eyes." And I blinked my eyes. I mean, I understand the power of prayer. But I didn't understand it as well as I was going to be understanding it. And he said a prayer. I don't know what he said. I'm sure it was, you know, recovery and help and watch over Chris and whatnot at that time. But it was from that time on that I really, it, it was probably another 3 or 4 months till I really realized the power of prayer and the true grace of God. Because I, when I went through the Marine Corps thing and the feeding auger accident and the drunk driver, I was a young man. I'm an extrovert. I'm a AAA personality. I can do it. I will achieve it. Don't stop me. Get up. Nothing's going to stop me. And I felt that way my whole life. I still feel like that. And if there's a will, there's a way. And I always just pushed ahead. I would say a little prayer once in a while, but it wasn't like that was my focus at all. And so following my broken neck is what started to really change my life as far as understanding the grace of God.
Mm. So, so give me a little, you just gave us a little bit of a before, like what you were like before that accident and before that prayer. So, how did this show up when you really began to understand the grace of God? How were you different at that point?
I've always been an overachiever. I mean, I overwork. I mean, it's like, you may expect something to be done, but I'm going to do it better.
Mm.
Or if we're all going to shovel a shovel full of dirt into a hole and pass it around, as we did when we put my mother's ashes when after she passed away, we had a little ceremony a year later on our farm, and when the shovel got to me, I put two shovel loads of dirt in, and my brother said, "Oh, there's Jay, always the overachiever," So,
Yeah.
so, but I always, when I got, it took me about 6 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks out of the hospital. I went to a place called Sister Kenny Institute in Minneapolis, and a huge, huge hospital with a specialty clinic for spinal cord trauma, traumatic brain injury, which I've had, and stroke victims, and that's all that's there. And it's a limited area. But I would say it was probably about 4 months, roughly 3.5 months into that my mom and dad had come to visit. And my mother asked me, she said, is everything okay? And I said, yeah, it's going good. I mean, I'm still laying there with this halo cast bullet in my skull and a big plastic thing on my chest down. You can't move anything, and I'm paralyzed. So it's like my left arm was starting to move at that point. And I told her, I said, Mom, I guess I just kind of asked myself, why me? Why me? I mean, and I didn't mean it in a bad way, like, woe is me, or
Right.
why did he do this to me, or what happened? It was something's got to change because I should have died when I was 17. I died when I was 19. I died when I was 23. I died when I'm 31. This is getting old. This is like, it's not just one thing happening to somebody, which is usually the rule. This
Hmm.
is multiple times, all within 12, 13 years. It's
Yeah.
like, it's, you know, and all the surgeries included with it, and many, many more to come later. But she said, Jay, that, the one thing you have to realize, and this is what really got my attention, it should be very important that all listeners and everybody, and I remember plain as day, and that is, she said to me, she said, you know, you got to remember this, Jay, you are the one that chose to jump in the pool.
Hmm.
Right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Some guys were going to throw you in, having fun, horsing around, but you chose to jump in first. It was God that helped pull you out. It was
Hmm.
God that helped that lady go down after 8 minutes because had already drowned and were turning colors and getting dark, within your skin. And it was God that helped the other gentleman realize that she couldn't do it on her own, and he went in because I was down at the 9.5, 10 foot depth area on the bottom.
Mm.
And so that got my attention to, wow, I never thought about it like that. I never thought about it. It's kind of like my mother saying, quit doing this to us. It's like, but the gentleman that had said the prayer went to a very large church, a very large congregation. I don't know, around 5,000 people. And he went every Sunday to each of the three services and every Wednesday to the service they had and asked everybody that was there, stood up and asked everybody to pray for me. And never missed a Sunday. And this was months and months and months.
Mm.
And my mother did it in our church and such. And I was born and raised Methodist, which back when I was a little boy, you didn't talk, it was quiet in church. You didn't say anything. And but she said she assured me that they asked for prayer requests, so, and I don't know how many other people, but my point on saying this is that during the week, I outperformed all the time. I mean, I always did more than they requested, always. I mean, they would get mad at me. I wouldn't rest. I worked during our rest area times. I still worked out. I didn't care. I don't care. I just didn't care. And I would see incremental little things during the week as it kind of went on, kind of like watching the grass grow.
Mm.
It doesn't happen very fast. But at the same time, on Sundays, when we didn't have any therapy, I honestly got more back on Sundays. It was noticeable. Now,
Mm.
maybe not a lot. If you can move a finger just like that, half that. That's incredible. When you've been working all week on it and didn't move it a 16th of an inch. And so it just made me realize that it's the power of prayer is doing this to me on Sundays. So
Mm.
I worked all week to get to Sunday so I could get more back.
Mm.
So that's where I really felt was a turning point in my life.
Something I'm aware of as you're talking too is that God's grace is not there to do for us what we can do for ourselves. You had to participate in the therapy. You had to do
Hmm.
your work. Maybe you didn't have to do it as much as you did, but you couldn't lay in bed going, "Okay, God's going to heal me." You had to do your part, and God's grace did the part that you couldn't. And that example of Sundays when you were resting and you couldn't do anything and people were praying and suddenly you can move a finger more than you could all week. That's really amazing.
Well, it's something to hitchhike on something you just said, and I use this. I have this in my book, and it's just like, something I've said for decades, and it 10 two-letter words. If it is to be, it is up to me. Now,
Mm,
that's not to mean that everything is only up to you. It's up to the people you surround yourself with, whether it's and the Lord and all that. But still, you have to be the one that does it. He gives you the power to do it, or the strength to do it, or the faith to do it, but you still have to act on it. And that's what made me push. It helped me realize that like I said, I've always been an overachiever, but it made me realize that my overachievement helped me gain more on Sundays because it was like an encouragement to do that.
mm,
So it's a it was pretty heavy. I mean, looking back at that because when you're laying there and you're never supposed to move again, and I walked. I mean, I walked out of the hospital. I didn't walk well, and I practiced on it for months and this and that. And I only got to go home for a weekend, but it was a very, very, very tearful. Oh, wow. I was so overcome with emotion walking out to the car because they didn't want me to walk to the car. And I said,
right.
if you don't let me walk, get up and walk with the crutches and the halo cast bolted in, I have blood running down, then I'm not going to go. Put me back in my room. You've given me the weekend to go home, and I've been working at this, learning how to go up and down stairs on my rear end and everything that they taught me. And if they didn't think I could make it, then they wouldn't have let me go. But they want to take me all the way to the car. And I couldn't do that. But when I got out of the chair, you know how a hospital's got the two sets of doors
Mhm.
everywhere you go. And I stopped, I put my crutches across the door and wouldn't let them push me through, and I knew I had to walk to the car. I had to do it. I, Maybe it was God talking to me. I don't know. But I locked the wheels and I argued with them. And like I said before, and finally I got up and I started going and the pain was bad, but just the circumstances of the emotion of pushing through to do it was very heavy.
Mm.
And in between the doors, it finally really hit me. And the tears just, oh my gosh, it was terrible. And out in the parking lot, there were doctors, there were therapists, there were people that knew me, there were patients leaning out the windows, there were people that didn't know me. And, it was go Jay, go Jay, go Jay, or go, go, go if they didn't know my name. And that made it worse because it's like now my emotions are like, it's kind of like just you won the Super Bowl or you won whatever you've done, or you've just realized God's in your life. And it's just like, wow, it is true. It is there, and I made it. And it was like, wow. And that was, if I tell it in a lot of detail, I cry and I still cry to this day. I can't, very, very, very important moment in my life.
Yeah. Well, I won't try to make you cry, Jay, but
No,
I
I'm good.
yeah, I can see how powerful that is. And so many things, you had to push aside the pain and you had to be confident of taking each step. And
Yes.
that is and you had people cheering you on and supporting you and loving you and wanting you to do it. And that is just all such a powerful testimony of partnering with God in his grace to do something that shouldn't have happened.
No, no, it shouldn't have happened. And fortunately, though I did walk, I mean, and it got better over time as everything else. And I ended up being more what they call a functioning quadriplegic with marked right side hemiparesis. So my left side functioned better than my right side, kind of like a stroke victim.
Mm.
So my right side is never, I can move my right arm like this. I don't have any tricep. My hand doesn't work at all. It's been dead for a long time. My right leg is completely gone. My left side is weak, but I've been able to work it and I exercise my left arm. I've had so many surgeries though over the years because I overused the left side of my body for decades. And I was on a cane and leg braces for about 17 or 18 years. And I accomplished everything. I mean, I own multiple companies. I had to change things as things changed with me physically, different companies or start another company. And but I never quit. I always kept pushing. And then about uh, 25 years ago, approximately, or longer than that, I think, I had to have multiple brainstem surgeries. I've got a plug in my spinal cord that I should not be able to move anything. It's been that way for 12 years. I'm a case study at the Medical Center in Houston and at Seton Brain and Spine in Austin, Texas. And I've got a thing called syringomyelia. And it's kind of like a golf ball in a garden hose. It
Mm.
shouldn't let anything through. And then I've got a thing called, I'll get into a little medical issue, is called myomalacia, which is a softening of the cord that holds your spinal column or the holds the cord. It's the dura around the cord. So I've got the golf ball stuck in the garden hose. Now, if you take a hair dryer and heat the garden hose up, it shrinks even tighter and makes the cord narrower.
Mm.
And so then I've also got Brown-Séquard syndrome, which is an odd thing of feeling of pain and weakness that alternates around your body and moves all the time. It's real weird. And the guy that replaced my left knee the third time asked me, he said, "Do you know what a Brown-Séquard is?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am one." And he goes, "I've never met one. And I've been a surgeon for 23 years. I just talked to him about 2 months ago, and he said, "The thing I remember about you is you're a Brown-Séquard." And I've never met one again since then. And that was 8 years ago, 9 years ago.
Mm.
So it's just kind of a blessing that you keep pushing forward. But it's just an internal thing. And somebody did ask me, they said, what do you owe it to, or what do you think it is? And I think a lot of it's just stubbornness. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just I'm going to do it. But is that a combination of courage and grit and God's grace and faith, and all of those words, persistence, perseverance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or just being angry or frustrated or irritated or pain. Pain is a motivator because right now I'm in pain. My back is I've had 15 back surgeries. So I'm always in back pain, always. It never goes away. It's just is it how much worse is it or better is it? You know,
Mm.
and but the thing is, while we're having the conversation, and those people that are listening should know, there's an old saying, busy hands, busy mind. And when you're doing something, you're thinking about what you're doing. You're not thinking about this problem here. So in our conversation, my back pain is not as bad as it probably really is if we were not talking.
Yeah.
So you got to look at a lot of those things like that, and it gets kind of deep because which makes me think about as I'm talking about this, all the surgeries and that one really messed me up. When I went in on a cane and my leg braces and walked in, and after that I was on a walker for 18 years. So, and
Mm.
then things kept getting worse and worse, and more surgeries and more knee surgeries and more whatever. And so I've been in a power wheelchair now for about 8 years. So
Okay.
it's just but don't let it stop you. You can't
Hmm.
let it stop you. That's the whole point. It's
Hmm.
like if 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 a God didn't want me here, he would have let me die back when I was 17 years old or before that.
Hmm.
So I've got a purpose, and that's what I think that everybody realizes if they're alive, they have a purpose because that's the grace of God. He's giving that to you.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I talk about when I'm talking about God's grace is that we need to accept the things in our lives that we can't control, and
Oh yeah.
you know, there's only so much that we really can control. And you could choose to complain about everything, and it would probably keep your focus on the pain and the fact that you're in the wheelchair and things. But instead, you're like, okay, this is what it is, and I'm still here, and that's a good thing. So, what am I going to do with this now that I'm still here?
It is, and I just got back from that trip I had told you about, and it was traffic was horrendous. Oh
Mm.
my gosh, it was terrible. And I know that I can tell I'm getting older because I don't get as upset as much as I did when I was younger about traffic. And I mean, I'm talking 2 and 3 hour backups at a time. And then you drive 80 miles an hour for an hour, and then you sit for 2 more hours. It's
Mm.
like you may as well get out. And if I could get my scooter and the batteries would stay charged, or my wheelchair, I could just keep on going, you know. So,
Yeah.
you can, like you said, that's a very important point, Karen, is you gotta, you know, what else can I do about this?
Hmm.
Or how can I reach out, or who can help me, or what can I do, or what different direction can I take, or different tact of thing. And and it reminds me, I'd like to tell a little story that it's kind of about mindset, but mindset is the new term the last 20 years for what we used to call attitude,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
But I was on the East Coast of the United States, oh gosh, 40 45 years ago, roughly 45 years ago. And they had the long stretches of beach that were open in Georgia. And they went for miles and miles and miles. And they had these sailing wind carts, kind of like a boat, but it had wheels like bicycle tires, big wide ones, and a sail that probably was, I don't know, 12 feet in the air or something, maybe taller. And I was helped into one that held two people, and we were going southbound on the beach, probably 50, 55 miles an hour, maybe faster. And, and it's just like exhilarating. It's like, wow, this is like, you feel free. You're out, just the wind power is really pushing you along. And coming north, well, there was south of us or ahead of us, there was a little dot and it kept getting closer and closer and closer. Well, it was another cart and it was going northbound, one person. But we probably went 50, 60 feet apart. But when we passed each other, we probably were doing 100 miles an hour combined speed, and it was fast. And I was thinking, how in the heck can we be in the same kind of cart on the same beach with the wind going the same direction, and we're going two completely opposite directions? And the more I thought about it, it's the set of the sail
Mm.
that changes your direction. So that's where, and I was thinking mindset, to use the term, 40 some 45 years ago, and then it becomes a term, not that I created it by any means, but and that's where your attitude comes from. So it's your attitude or your mindset can very often control the direction of your life, but you have to want it, and God will let you have it. You just need to believe that this is what I'm to do about it. And prayer, there again, doesn't hurt. And I know I get a lot of comments about, I'm great. It's like, one gentleman asked me what was I thinking about when I got out of the auger, when I had my leg broken and leg cut open, or my ankle broken, my leg cut open, and all that. And I said, well, I was grateful I didn't. I was grateful because he said, well, how can you feel like that with what just happened? I said, because if I wasn't great, I mean, I could have been gone. So
Hmm.
count what you have left, not what you've lost.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's very important. And to
that
think
is.
about that.
Mhm. That is really important. Yeah. Yeah, as you were telling that story, I got to thinking about Jesus said the Holy Spirit is like the wind. It's like, we can set our sail one way or the other, but the Holy
Well, you
Spirit's
could,
still moving us.
right. Well, you either
Yeah.
accept it or you don't
Yeah.
accept it.
Exactly. Yeah.
That it's the same thing, like you say. That I've not used that before, but that's an excellent point.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like deny or and I've had this question as a philosophical question. Had if I look back at that prayer that Tom Cooper offered to me and then kept the prayers weekly, but if I had denied that or had not accepted that prayer, would that have been like denying God?
Mm,
And I've asked myself probably 100,000 times, would I have ever been able to move again had I not accepted that prayer?
mm, mm.
In other
Yeah.
words, God could have said, "You want it your way, okay."
Yeah. Because he
You
could
know,
have. He could have said, okay, you're going to do it on your own.
yeah, all on your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a good question.
Hmm.
It's a fair question.
Yeah. I guess you'll get to ask him one day.
Um,
Yeah.
it's a It's really, and that's where I turn a lot, Karen, I turn a lot of this, I say it philosophically, it's like, I tie a lot of things into time and life because people need to recognize how fast time goes and that your life is important. Everybody's life's important, but
Right.
it's what you do with it,
Hmm.
and if you do for others. I heard when I was a kid, the more people you help, the better person you become. And the more you will help, and the more hopefully they will help. And so, it's like a paying it ahead or paying it forward kind of thing. And and I believe that it's a good way to look at things too, because there's so much more. We all have a lot to offer, but do we do it?
Hmm.
Do we actually step up to the plate and offer it? It's like the offering plate. If you have an offering plate in your church, the one I've been going to doesn't have an offering plate. They just got it's like donations or little boxes, and they put stuff in or it goes through the wall, and which is different. I've never had that before, but
Yeah.
it's okay. But it's
Hmm.
like when people put a donation in the plate, and I look at when I was a kid. And my dad gives me 50 cents to put in the plate as it goes by back in the mid 50s. you know, I was probably thinking, gee, maybe I can make change out of this. I'll drop a half a dollar in and take a quarter out. I'm still giving something, but I mean, but and if you don't have a laugh and a smile about some of that stuff, because as you get older, you think about that,
Yeah.
and but what was I thinking about when I put that in? I don't know. I just put it in. I thought it was a thing you had supposed to do, or
Hmm.
you had to do, or whatever. And now you do it, it's like I think more about who's this $100 going to help, or
Hmm.
whatever that amount is,
Hmm.
and I don't go to church too much. I don't, it's but I believe I have a very personal relationship with the Lord. I have to have, or I wouldn't be here. It's hard for me to get, and it's very painful to do it, and load up my ramp and into the van and hand controls. It's you know, but it's not that I don't ever, but it's more about what you do with your life outside of it,
Hmm.
you know, because that's where you're at. You're out in the world all the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about your book that you wrote, Jay.
it's called, the name of it is The Strength Within You. It's
Hmm.
always too soon to quit. It's done very, very well on Amazon. It's number one in two categories. One is for people with disabilities and needing motivation,
Hmm.
which is cool. I think that's
Yeah.
good. It's a good thing
Yeah.
for me to realize that it's doing that. And the other one is for later teens through people in their early to mid 30s
Hmm.
for motivation and inspiration. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of good younger people, that are working hard and producing and doing what, I don't know, the Lord wants them to do, or
Hmm.
what they're, set there to do as an individual. But there's a lot of people out there that are just dead to the world. They're they think there's somebody else there to provide, and they need to realize
Hmm.
that it's up to them to do it, you know.
Right. Right.
And but the book, like I say, The Strength Within You, It's Always Too Soon to Quit. And it talks about some of my medical issues and what I went through, but it talks more about how I overcame them and what I did during that and some of what the things I was thinking about. So it draws back into where do you come up with that courage and that grit and the resilience and the perseverance and all those things that you have within you to push forward to overcome the adversities and the detours and the problems you have in life. And so much of the time, it's not the fact that you overcame an obstacle. Yeah, that's important, but it's how did you do that? What did
Hmm.
you do to overcome it? And then what did you learn from it? Because if you learn something from every obstacle you overcome or setback or detour or problem you have in your life, you get further down the road. It's just
Hmm.
it gives you that strength. And there's so many people out there. And I think that a lot of people can hear, me included, that, I've been to a lot of seminars and things throughout my life by choice. And back when Zig Ziglar was out, remember Zig Ziglar?
Yes, I
And
do.
I went to Zig probably 15 times. And matter of fact, he saw me once at the Rosemont Horizon up in Chicago. Oh my gosh, that's been decades ago. And I was on my walker, and he asked me, he said, "Hey, I've seen you in here before, and no, I was still on my cane, and that was before my walker. I saw him after I had my walker, and we talked, but he said, I want you to sit up front more. And then he even gave me some tickets to go to just to hand out because I always took like five or six or seven other people.
Hmm.
But the thing is, reach out and learn. There's a lot of places people can become motivated, inspired, and I think that God intended it that way. I don't think he intended that he is the savior, though at the same time he wants you to learn from others because
Yes.
that helps you share with others because it's a
Yes.
third party story. Somebody that has had this happen and you can relate it with a lot of passion because that's the way it truly is.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. We do. We need to encourage each other. We need to hear each other's stories. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing here.
Well, it's like, yeah, it's like, I think you mentioned something before. Oh, I can't think what we're talking about. But it's like, come on, you can do it. You got to
Hmm.
try. You
Yeah.
have to push a little harder. Now some people in today's world, because of what today's world has become, in a lot of cases is, oh no, I'll just let it slide by because it's hard, it's difficult, or I don't want to do it, or it feels uncomfortable and guess what? That's life,
Hmm.
and when
Yeah.
you realize that, I think that's what gives you the ability to move forward with like the word you have behind you with grace. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, and then share it accordingly, and don't be afraid to share things,
Right.
and it's like the people that are wondering why isn't this happening? It's are they doing anything to make it happen?
Hmm.
Are they even saying a prayer? It's like when I go to bed every night, I have a little prayer with God, and I thank Him for what I've been through, good and bad. It doesn't matter because even if it was not the best, what did I learn from it? And then I always know that I trust Him with my next day.
Hmm.
So thanking and trust, that's a big thing to have.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. Well, Jay, this has been an amazing conversation. And I
Well,
just
thank
like
you.
to, yeah, and I will be sure to put the link for your book on Amazon. And do you have a website where people can reach out to you
I
also?
do. My website is neverquittrying.com.
Okay.
And I was, I was trying to find a website that, well, how can that have relate to what I do and talk about and or feel or my book or something? I thought, oh, I never quit trying. I typed that in, it came up. I go, oh my gosh, that's available. So,
There you
and
go.
then I've got on my email is just J at never quit trying doc. But there's a little thing link down in there, I'd like to tell a little story. I got an email about 3 weeks ago from a lady that was 88 and a half,
Hmm.
and she got her son my book from her son, who got it from his son, and I don't know how they got it, but on the email she's and I don't this isn't verbatim, but it's like, dear Mr. Setchell, I want you to know that I'm 88 and a half and my husband passed away about 5 years ago. I'm not in the best of health, but I'm not bad either. And I don't see myself, I haven't seen myself making it to 90 or more than 90, and I'll be gone. And she said, but I read your book and then I read it again. And when the second time I underlined things and I highlighted things and I circled things, and then I went back through it and I read all those things again. And I want you to know that right now I'm planning my 95th birthday.
That's
Now
awesome.
that's pretty cool for
Yeah.
not thinking you're even going to go. So it must have done something for her. And she's 88,
Yeah.
and it's looking back at things that I found and I realized and you pick up. So
Hmm.
it's in some podcasts, people want to talk more about the military or more about entrepreneurialism or something. And I've been fortunate enough. I've had 3 or 4 with pastors, Navy chaplains, one in Italy that was assigned over there for 3 years. And he's given me this platform to help share
Yeah.
and to have been through what I've been through. And I mean, I've spent almost 4 years of my life in hospitals. So, when you take all that over all the decades and all the years, and, because I always thought I'd be a farmer, I always thought I'd be a pilot. I mean, I started flying when I was 14, soloed, by myself, flew by myself, and I thought I'd do that, but it just didn't, it wasn't to be. So,
Hmm.
you, you, you have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to
Yeah.
move forward in whatever direction that is.
Yeah.
And one of the gentlemen I just visited, he was in Vietnam 5 days, and stepped on a mine and lost both his legs. And two
Wow.
of the guys also got killed and they were on the fire team. And he said, I'm grateful because that's all I lost was my legs. I didn't lose my life, and he just got back from Guatemala way, way, way out. They have to have security people, and he's got his prostheses on and a lot of pain, 90, 95 degrees every day, very humid. And he goes down there. Last year he didn't get to go. He had some leg problems, but he still goes, and I help donate to that. But he's always spreading the word. And I asked him. I said, Francisco, do you have you ever seen any people that you've prayed with or spread the word to through your missionary, and he's a pastor as well, but through your missionary efforts over the years? He said, oh my gosh. He said, Jay, we've had people become doctors, attorneys, pastors, you know, yes, many people have done very good, and but they've accepted the Lord. And he showed me some pictures and a couple little videos of they what they did with my money is they bought 300 pairs of, here we would call them Crocs.
Hmm.
Okay, I've never had a Croc in my life. I not for me. But they were kind of like that, but they're a little more durable and they let water through because it's very wet down there. And they had
Hmm.
to cross a couple of rivers that even had piranha in them to get to this island where they spent this time. But he had little children that were, between ages of 5 and 9, I would guess. And he told me, but 5 and 9, 5 and 10, they were hugging him, his wife, crying, holding their shoes, and just all that kind of stuff. And it really gave you a feeling of they understood. As young
Yeah.
children, they were open to this bigger power.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's really done good,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and he's blessed with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's amazing. He has quite a story too, I'm sure. Wow.
Oh,
Y- Yeah.
and his wife is from Guatemala by chance, but
Okay.
they've been to other countries, but it's just they're more familiar with some of that. And yeah, they're good people. They're good
Yeah.
people. And I mean, and he's 77 and she's 76, and they're still doing it. Where
Mm-hmm.
people that are 25 or 30 or 35 go, oh, I don't know. I like air conditioning and I'm not going to go do that. And am I going to go live with the snakes and or whatever. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And to spread the word at all,
Yeah.
so I guess they reap their rewards,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
because the good Lord sees everything we're doing. He
Yeah.
knows what we're thinking ahead before we think it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a good thing.
Yeah.
So
So, if there's one big takeaway you want our listeners to hear from this conversation, what would that be?
actually, I'd like to share two. I think one
Okay.
is that hope is a good thing. Keeping hope is a good thing, but hope is not near as strong as true faith and believing. They're on two different levels. One's
Mm,
kind of hoping you're going to, I don't know, win the lottery, and the faith is you're going to do it. But
mm.
lottery is not a good example, but
Right.
it's just something to throw out. So faith and believing stronger than hope. And then the other main thing is what lies behind us and what lies ahead of us are really small matters compared to what lies within us.
Mm,
Because within you, you have the power to take what you've learned, what you've seen, what you've accomplished, what you failed at, what you've learned to apply into the future. So that's within you. And God keeps it in there for you to draw upon. Draw upon that strength he's given you.
mm.
That would be it.
That's powerful. Thank you so much, Jay. So,
Hey, you're welcome very much, Karen. Thank you.
I think that one of the things that makes Jay's story so powerful is that he has been spared from death so many times, and yet he still lives with pain. And it's easy to say, well, at least he's alive. But it would be just as easy to say that if God kept him from dying, why couldn't God have healed him 100% completely? And Jay chooses to focus on the life God has given him and on inspiring others. So that's all for today. Until next time, remember, whatever you're walking through, the grace you need is already being forged.